Okay, so you've been digging into something pretty fundamental, haven't you? This whole question of why we suffer. And you shared some really interesting material, clearly looking to, get to the heart of it without getting totally overwhelmed. So let's dive in. Today, we're looking closely at Joseph Nguyen's book, Don't Believe Everything You Think.
Yeah, it's a fascinating take. Nguyen blends sort of psychological ideas with spiritual wisdom. His main point is that our emotional pain, our psychological suffering, it doesn't really come from out there, from events. It comes from, well, from inside, from our own minds.
Exactly. And the material you sent, these excerpts from his book, what we want to do is pull out the real gems for you. We're trying to figure out where those negative feelings actually start and, maybe more importantly, how you can find a bit more peace, more joy, more consistently. Hopefully you'll have a few aha moments listening to this.
Definitely. And Nguyen kicks things off with a pretty bold claim. Suffering, at least the emotional kind, is optional. He uses that concept, you sometimes hear it in Buddhism, about the second arrow. Life hits us with painful stuff that's like the first arrow. That happens. But the suffering that comes after, the dwelling on it, the story we tell ourselves, that's the second arrow. And Nguyen says, we actually have a choice about whether we shoot ourselves with that second one.
Okay, so the initial hit might be unavoidable, but the lingering misery that's on us, or rather our minds. So how do we, not pick up that second arrow? This is where his ideas get really practical, I think. He makes this key distinction between just having thoughts and the act of thinking.
Exactly. He describes thoughts as these spontaneous things, like little bursts of mental energy that just pop up. He even suggests that they might come from something bigger, like the universe or infinite intelligence. They just arrive effortlessly. We don't consciously create them.
Like bubbles rising to the surface?
Sort of, yeah. Neutral bits of data, almost. But then there's thinking. And thinking is when we actively grab onto those thoughts. We analyze them, judge them, weave narratives around them. That deliberate engagement, Nguyen argues, that's where the suffering begins. It takes effort, willpower.
He gives that example about money, which I think makes it really clear. Like, imagine a thought pops into your head. Wow, wouldn't it be amazing to earn X amount? That first thought. It might feel neutral, maybe even exciting.
Right. It's just a possibility floating by. But then the thinking kicks in. Oh, but I could never do that. I'm not good enough. The timing's wrong. It's impossible. That's the thinking. That's the commentary track that layers on the negativity, creating feelings like doubt, fear, inadequacy.
So, okay, if negative thinking is the culprit, does that mean we just need to force ourselves to think positive thoughts instead? Like positive affirmations all day?
Well, that's what's interesting. Nguyen actually pushes back against that common advice. He asks us to recall a moment of pure, genuine joy, just pure happiness.
Okay.
And then ask yourself, in that precise moment of feeling the joy, what active, deliberate thinking were you doing?
Probably not much, really, if anything.
Exactly. For most people, in those peak moments, the mind is actually pretty quiet. There isn't a lot of analysis going on. Or, as Nguyen points out, often the feeling of joy comes first, and then maybe a thought arises like, wow, this is great. The feeling precedes the label.
So it's like our natural state, our baseline is actually peaceful, joyful even.
That's his premise. Joy, love, peace. That's our factory setting. It's the constant churning, the thinking that pulls us away from it.
We have that analogy, the thought-o-meter.
Yeah, the more you're actively analyzing and caught up in thinking, the higher the needle goes on the stress meter. Less thinking, less stress.
Okay, that leads into his framework, right? The 3 principles. How does that fit in?
Right. So he sees these principles as explaining how our entire human experience is created, moment by moment. The first is universal mind. Think of it as the fundamental intelligence behind all life, the energy in everything. It's the source from which all thoughts ultimately arise. He suggests that feeling connected to this, to the bigger picture, naturally leads to more positive feelings.
Like feeling part of something larger than just yourself.
Exactly. Then there's consciousness. This is simply our capacity for awareness, the fact that we know we exist, that we can perceive our thoughts and feelings. Without it, nothing would register.
Got it. Mind, consciousness.
And the third is thought. This is our personal ability to take that formless energy from the universal mind and, well, shape it into our own unique reality through the specific thoughts we have. These 3 are always working together, inseparable.
Okay, so if this active thinking is the main source of the trouble, the big question is, how do we stop doing it so much? It feels automatic.
Yeah, and he's clear. It's not about trying to achieve a completely blank mind. That's impossible, like trying to stop your heart from beating. The goal is more subtle. It's about reducing the thinking about the thoughts, that second layer of commentary and judgment. The main tool, he says, is awareness. Just noticing when you're caught up in thinking. The act of becoming aware that you're thinking automatically creates a little bit of space, a little detachment. You're no longer lost in the thought, you're observing it.
He uses those analogies like the cloudy water.
Right. If you keep stirring a glass of muddy water, it stays muddy. But if you just let it be,
The sediment settles.
exactly, the water clears naturally. Our minds can be like that. If we stop agitating them with constant analysis, they tend to settle into clarity.
And the quicksand one, too.
Yeah, that's powerful. Struggling against negative thinking, fighting it, often just makes us sink deeper into those bad feelings. Nguyen suggests just letting go, stopping the struggle, trusting that there's an inherent peace, an inner buoyancy that will emerge if we relax.
And it's okay if we drift back into thinking sometimes.
Absolutely. He stresses that as a natural oscillation. We'll think, we'll notice, we'll return to quiet awareness, we'll think again. It's the human experience, not about achieving some permanent state of no thought.
But then, how do we get things done? If we're not constantly thinking, planning, analyzing, don't we need that for work, for life?
That's a really common question. And his answer points toward states like flow, or what he calls non-thinking, as actually being the state of peak performance. Think about when you're totally absorbed in something you love, or even just focused work. Time disappears.
Yeah, you're just doing it, not thinking about doing it.
Exactly. There's no running commentary, no self-critique in that moment. He mentions athletes in the zone, reacting perfectly without conscious thought.
Like that concept of mushin in martial arts.
Precisely. A mind without ripples, free from distracting thoughts, allowing for pure instinctual action. Often, it's the after-action thinking, the overanalysis, that messes us up later. Nguyen believes we function best, we're most creative and effective when we operate from that quieter state, free from the ego's need to constantly narrate and control.
Okay, but what about big goals, ambitions? If I stop thinking so much, do my dreams just evaporate? That feels a bit scary for driven people.
He addresses this directly. He makes a really important distinction between goals that come from inspiration versus goals that come from desperation.
Inspiration versus desperation. Tell me more.
Goals from desperation often feel heavy, pressured. They come from a feeling of lack, like I need this thing to be okay, to feel worthy. They're often means goals. You want the thing to get you something else, like validation or security.
And even if you get it, the underlying feeling doesn't always go away.
Right. But goals from inspiration feel different. They feel lighter, energizing. There's a pull towards them, a sense of excitement or calling. It's like an artist creating just for the joy of it, not necessarily for fame or money. It comes from a place of fullness, not emptiness.
A desire to express something rather than fill a hole.
Yes. And this kind of inspiration, Nguyen suggests, arises naturally when the thinking mind quiets down. We tap into something deeper. He even offers a question to tap into this. What would I love to create in the world if I knew I absolutely could not fail? That gets past the fear-based thinking.
That leads into his ideas about unconditional love and creation, doesn't it? He mentioned his girlfriend.
Yeah, McKenna. He shares how he realized her love for him wasn't based on a list of reasons or conditions. It just was. It flowed from her own inner state of being.
From abundance, not requirement.
Exactly. And that's unconditional love. Unconditional creation is similar creating just because you want to, because it feels good and right in the moment, not for some external payoff. The positive feeling is immediate, inherent in the act itself. And this state is most accessible, he says, in non-thinking.
Okay, so let's say you practice this. You find moments of quiet, you experience this peace, but then what? Does it feel weird? Uncomfortable even?
It can. And Nguyen acknowledges that. Initial feelings of worry, maybe anxiety, even doubt, they're totally normal. It's like the ego, the part of us identified with thinking, feels unemployed and tries to get its old job back by stirring things up.
Shouldn't I be worrying about something?
Right. The key is to just remember the core principle. Thinking is what creates those negative feelings. Don't get drawn back into analyzing the piece. Instead, he suggests channeling the energy you save from not overthinking into taking action on those inspired goals we talked about.
And he mentioned a morning ritual.
Yeah, an activation ritual, he calls it. Just a way to intentionally start the day by cultivating that quieter state of mind, setting the tone.
Okay, this ties into that classic line. Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That really resonates.
It's fundamental to his view. He uses the piano key analogy. A single key isn't good or bad on its own. It only sounds right or wrong in the context of the music being played.
So events themselves aren't inherently loaded with meaning until we think about them a certain way?
Exactly. Instead of judging everything externally, look for the understanding within. Negative emotions become signals not that something is objectively bad, but that we've slipped into unhelpful thinking about it. Remembering that thinking is the source allows the feeling to lose its power and just dissolve.
But how do we know what to do? If we're not analyzing pros and cons constantly, how do we make decisions? This is where intuition comes in, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Nguyen believes we actually have a deep inner knowing, a gut feeling and intuition. We often know the answer deep down.
But we talk ourselves out of it.
We do. We overthink it. We seek endless external opinions and validation, drowning out that quieter inner voice. He really emphasizes trusting that inner compass.
Society doesn't always reward that, though.
No, often intuition is only recognized as valid in hindsight once it's proven right by external results. Fear and self-doubt are huge blockers. But when we quiet the thinking, we make space to actually hear and trust that inner wisdom, which he connects back to that infinite intelligence or universal mind.
So how do we follow it? It can feel kind of vague sometimes, that intuitive nudge.
It tends to arise most clearly in that state of non-thinking, in the present moment. It's less of a loud command and more of a subtle sense, a pull. Trusting yourself is paramount. Nguyen talks about miracles happening when we follow intuition, even when it seems illogical or goes against the grain.
What stops us?
Fear, mainly. Fear of being wrong, fear of the unknown. Acknowledging the fear without letting the thinking about the fear take over is key. Returning to that peaceful, non-thinking state allows the courage to follow the intuition to emerge.
He also talks about creating space for miracles. How does less thinking do that? It sounds a bit magical.
Well, think of the Zen story, the professor visiting the master, his cup already full. The master keeps pouring tea, overflowing the cup.
You can't pour anything new into a full cup.
Exactly. If our minds are crammed full of old beliefs, worries, and constant analysis, there's no room for fresh insights, new possibilities, or what Nguyen calls divine downloads. Space, mental quietness, nothingness is actually fertile ground for creation. Rest, stepping away from the problem, allows insights to surface. Think of Edison or Einstein having breakthroughs during moments of relaxation.
So there's a process.
He suggests one. First, become aware you're caught in thinking. Second, consciously surrender. Trust that inner wisdom has the answer. Third, deliberately cultivate positive feelings like gratitude or peace, which makes you more receptive.
Okay, last thing. What if you start living like this more, in non-thinking, but it feels off? Are there common roadblocks?
Yes, that feeling of unfamiliar peace can itself trigger anxiety. This feels too calm. Something must be wrong.
The brain wanting its familiar chaos back.
Sort of, yeah. It's seeking the familiar pattern, mistaking thinking for safety. Having faith in the unknown, trusting that this quieter state is actually beneficial, is crucial. And remember, falling back into thinking patterns is totally normal. It's not failure. The skill is just noticing it without judgment and gently guiding yourself back to awareness, back to peace.
So wrapping it all up, the core message seems to be that peace, love, joy, they aren't things you need to achieve through intense effort or thinking. You're always potentially just one thought away from them, and they naturally arise from that state of non-thinking.
Precisely. And hopefully through this discussion, you've gained some perspectives that maybe shift things a little for you. It's often a very simple truth, even though our minds love to make things complicated.
Yeah, the encouragement seems to be keep exploring that peaceful state. Keep practicing, letting go of the extra thinking. See what happens. He even suggests, kind of charmingly, that as you embody this more, people might notice a difference in you, seem more vibrant, and ask what's changed, giving you a chance to share.
Ultimately, the knowledge is there now. You have a framework to understand why you might be suffering psychologically and how to access that inherent peace and joy that's always available underneath the noise. The invitation is to trust your own inner wisdom, your intuition, as you continue on from here.